50,000 sales calls. Now that's not a typo. Over the last few years, I've booked more calls than most coaches will in their entire lifetime. And it's been a complete battlefield, minefield. And in this video, I'm gonna share the gems of what I've learned and what can save you a hell of a lot of time. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Charlie Johnson. I built a fitness business that helped over 8,000 people. We've generated over $15 million online. And my job is to help you have the same success I have had. And in this video, I'm gonna break down the lessons I learned in booking 50,000 sales calls and exactly what you can do and what you can take from this to make as much money as possible, make sure your ads are profitable, and make sure everything fires like a well-oiled machine. And we're gonna break this into different segments. So we've got, firstly, show rate, close rate, objections, increasing cash collected. Then we have the sales team. We're gonna talk about when you should have a sales team. We're then gonna talk about what's called God mode, and then we're gonna talk about data lastly. Now, if we start where it all begins, show rate. If someone doesn't show for a sales call, then you can't close them. So this is the big bottleneck which most people struggle with. Now, where I would say most people need to understand the numbers of what KPIs you should be looking for here. If you're running pretty much organic traffic and it's warm, like realistic, like a 70% show rate is what you should be shooting for. If you're running paid ads and a lot of it's cold, we generally want like 50%, so half would be a fair show rate. And that's roughly what I would expect in terms of KPI. So if your show rate is under either of these, then this is something you should look to try and fix. Now, where does this all begin and how do you actually optimize the show rate? Firstly, we have to look at the pre-call. And what do I mean by pre-call? So the sequences, the way people are booked in, the language that is used. So this would be, for example, if you're doing DM, Instagram setting, messaging, are you hyping people up to get up on the sales call? If you've got a sales team who are taking the call, are you hyping the closer up? And one of the ways I would frame that is you're gonna speak with Josh. He's our head coach. He's got knowledge in X, Y, Z. He helps some of our best and highest performing clients. This is how you really get this to crush, is by hyping up your team members so that when your prospects are coming onto the sales calls, they're excited about who they're speaking to. And the reason people don't show up is because they're not excited for the call. And it's like if you booked in a sales call with a fitness business and Chris Bumstead was gonna take a sales call, would you turn up? Yes, because you want to speak to Chris Bumstead. So you want to have that try and Chris Bumstead effect with your team and really hype them up. So one of the ways to do this is actually have them involved in some of your content perhaps. So for example, some of our sales team will actually have in some of our content in our podcasts. What I would also do in addition to this in the pre-call phase is make sure that you give them some value in the conversation when you're booking them in with a DM, and it's not just seen as a sales call they're getting onto. You're gonna give them some value on the call, so there's a reason for them to turn up. The other things we have to look at in terms of pre-call are even systems we can use from a marketing perspective. So skepticism is at an all-time high right now online. Everyone is incredibly skeptical, which is actually one of the reasons why I'm incredibly clinical in showcasing everything in my life personally on YouTube. I've got $10 million 2 Comma Club plaque on the wall over there. You can go and check out my Instagram and see that. I've got other ones on the wall behind me, document everything I do. And that's a big thing for you in your business. If you get client results, you should document them. You should share them all the time. Just like Gary Vaynerchuk says, you want to document, you don't create. So you want to showcase as much as possible in terms of your process, helping people, the results, the small wins, all those bits and pieces. Because what will happen, the more people see these pieces of content, the higher the likelihood they're going to show up for a call. Now, one of the things we created in 7-Figure Scaling Systems, our mastermind, is what we call the influence engine. And this is essentially where we use paid ads to push people into certain types of content before the call. And this basically means we want to engineer the type of content that someone's seeing before the call. So tons and tons of social proof, breaking objections, breaking limiting beliefs. And what we actually do with those, we look to try and crank up the spend on them. You don't spend a lot, but you look to try and take the frequency score up quite high. And the frequency score of paid ads is essentially how frequently someone sees it. And we'll try and get that sometimes up to 8 to 10, whereas normally we wouldn't let an ad go over 4. So that would be something I would look to do from a paid ads perspective. The other automation tools we can do, and some big mistakes I made at the beginning, are emails. So when I first started my fitness business, I was told and given poor guidance that you should send us basically as many emails as possible before someone books in a call. The reality is this is not what you want to do because it's very salesy. So I would limit that to like 2 to 3 emails max before someone books in a call. We actually had people canceling sales calls because they said it was too salesy with the amount of emails they were getting hit, in particular when you're dealing with executive people. So if you're doing pre-call emails, which you should do unless you hate money, then I would do probably maximum 2 to 3. The reality is though, if you're running these into people's Gmail accounts, what will happen is they'll just go into promotion and spam anyway, which is why what you actually have to have, which is nailed down, is a call confirmation page. And if you're a 7-figure scaling systems client, this is one of the things we have a full training exactly how to do, because the call confirmation page, step 2, we actually have an explanation to show them how to accept the calendar invite. Because again, if they don't show up for the sales call, you can't close them. So we have to try and make sure that's nailed down. So that is very important. Other things you also do pre-call have SMS reminders, and all these things can be automated. Now, one thing that isn't automated, and the thing that will make the biggest difference for your sales team or yourself having a higher sharp rate, is actually doing some good old-fashioned manual work, getting phone out, messaging them, or even better, to confirm the sales call. What I would do, I would send the person a video message, be like, hey Charlie, I'll be like, hey Jack, it's Charlie, look forward to speaking to you on Friday. Super excited to hear about you going to Marbella in the summer, that you want to get in great shape, blah, 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 blah. Something specific, hype them up, and then they know who they're speaking to. It's also very difficult for someone not to turn up to a call where someone sent them a personal video to them and they've visually seen that person. If it's just a name and a number, it's much easier to say no. So that would be a sneaky tip I would do. And if you have a sales team, that's something I would implement. And the third thing I want to talk about is friction. Now, what do I mean by friction? So before anyone comes into a sales call, you basically want to be having qualifying questions so they're coming into the call. So you understand the caliber of the client, whether you should be taking the call, all these types of things. So we have full trainings on this in 7-figure scaling systems. I've covered some of this in some of our other videos. But for example, the way you can alter the friction in a funnel is by increasing the qualifications in terms of how harshly you're pushing this. So if, for example, you're struggling to book calls, we would reduce the friction. And we would reduce the friction by removing price qualifying questions. Price qualifying question might be something like, how much are you willing to invest in coaching if I can guarantee you would get results? Are you willing to invest in coaching, yes or no? That type of thing. So that is going to increase friction. Now, if you have a lot of traffic, you book a lot of calls, then you probably want to have some friction in there. And if you also have a problem where your lead flow and your leads coming through, a lot of them are poor quality, you want to have friction in there. If I give an example of one of our clients, Nathan Johnson, who actually just texted me before this, who's done 122,000 net this month in December, he has to have a lot of friction in his funnel because he deals with the South Asian Indian market. He gets a lot of viral content. He gets a lot of traffic. He gets a lot of leads. Probably 90% of these leads are poor quality. So he has to have lots of friction. Now, if you're watching this, if you struggle to get sales and you struggle to get calls actually booked, then you want to reduce your friction. So we optimize this based upon what essentially problem we're looking to solve. And this is really the way you want to think about business all the time. What problem does this solve? And the reason you can actually make huge leap forwards in your business, particularly when you work with someone who's actually done the thing you want to do, is they identify the problem, they give you the solution, you fix the bottleneck, boom, your business grows. And the reason most people don't grow is they're not fixing something that actually is the real problem holding them back. And this is where friction in the funnel is a huge thing. So these are the main things I look at in terms of show rate. Now, when we look at closing rate, so one thing that's huge is first impressions. So do you look like you're in your mum's basement? Are you dressed professionally? Do you look like a fitness trainer? Are you in shape? Are you articulate? Do you seem like you have high energy, high frequency? These things are very, very important. So first impressions are huge. A huge tip I would give to you if you or your team are selling to executives, try wearing collared polo shirts and looking a little bit smarter, because naturally it will increase the impression in terms of the individuals. So I would do that. Now, when we've gone past first impressions, actually one little bonus thing I'd give on here as well. If you have closers who work for you or yourself, and you sometimes don't have a great background, one of the best things I would do is have a virtual background. So we have standardized ones we use in our fitness business and 7-figure scaling systems that has basically our logo, so it looks very professional. So that is something I would do. Now, next up, we have emotion. The biggest mistake people make on sales calls, why I don't close, is they sell on benefits and features. No one gives a flying fuck about your app, your carb cycling plan, like no one cares. The reality is people buy and do things from emotion. You are wanting to build your business because of emotion, because you have something in you that has an emotional trigger. It's like, I need to make money, I need to be successful, I need to prove certain people wrong. This is the same for people who want to lose weight. There is an emotional thing that's happened or is triggering them to want to get in shape. And if you talk about this on the call, you will have a higher close rate. And the problem that happens on sales calls is someone will open themselves up with a big pain point, but the closer doesn't have the cojones to ask the difficult question. And I'll give you a good example. One of our clients, Chen Yang, who did $145,000 last month, she had someone who their partner had cheated on him. And then the closer just skipped past it. Now, what she should have done is, how did that make you feel? Is this why you want to get in shape? You pull on that emotional heartstring, because that's the thing that's going to get someone to buy. That's the thing that's going to get someone to take action. And you're actually doing this from a point of kindness, because most people won't actually go have the minerals to ask the difficult question, and they will have respect for you doing it. And it's also easier for someone to ask the emotional, difficult question who's out of the loop of your own personal life. It's like a third party, almost like observer to it. So emotion is a huge thing. Next up is stories. Now, stories are what sell, and our job is storytelling. Now, one of the things I would do based upon the call questions you have, and this is a hack I would do actually before any sales calls to increase your close rate, is I would check out someone's social media profiles. And if you want to be a PIF hunter and get paid in full, this helps a lot. Essentially what you do is you vet through their profile, look for things, maybe what cars they drive, where they go on holiday, all these types of things. See things that's similar to them, see what they like. Try and find a client who's in exactly the same situation as them. So if I spoke about our client Andy, who's a dentist in Dallas, Texas, no, sorry, he's from Austin, Texas, and how he lost 10, 15 kilos. He got abs the first time at like 50 years old, and how he got his wife abs the first time at 50 years old. That is a pretty sick story. I can bring up their transformations on the screen. If someone else is a dentist who is from the United States, that's very relatable. If they're some similar age, that's very relatable. You want to find a connection someone can make in their head where they can see, oh, that person has done the exact thing that I want to do. They're the same as me, therefore this works. And this is basically how you reduce sales resistance. And this is where most people are going wrong, because they're selling on their wanky app. They're talking about themselves, not talking about other people's stories. And then lastly, like we were just talking about here, you need to show proof, not promises. So don't worry about talking about guarantees. Show proof all the time of how you're solving people's problems. And one of the best ways you can do this from a sales calls perspective is if you have a community, like a school group, Facebook group, go into that community, go into that group, and actually show the client wins, show client sharing results. This is one of the most powerful things that happen, because people, again, are looking for other people like them who've done the thing they want to do. And this is huge. And the last bonus I'm going to give on you in here is going to put is names. Now, what do I mean by names? The most important thing you need to get if you want to drive emotion in a sales call is find out someone's partner's name, find out their kids' names, because these are the most important people in their life. Therefore, you want to use those throughout the call, and you should be making notes as you go through. So for example, if you came onto a sales call with me, I'd find out, okay, do you have a partner? Awesome, what's your partner's name? Fiona. Cool, is Fiona supportive of you getting in great shape? I presume she's not opposed to that. Opposed is a very powerful word, because opposed is directly against. And when we come on to objections later on, spouse, if we've already spoken about how Fiona's not opposed to you getting in a better shape, it's difficult to talk about her being the problem at the end, because you already told me she's not against it. And this is where we have to use these things smartly. Now, if we think about using people's children's names, let's say I find out you've got 2 kids and I ask, okay, cool, what's their names? Timmy and John. Awesome. I presume one of the reasons you want to drop weight is A, so you can actually live past 60, because there's not many people who are 250 pounds plus who live past 60. And I imagine you want your kids to look up to you, right? Like I remember when I was a kid, I looked up to like superhero, Superman. I imagine you want to be like superhero, Superman for your kids, right? That is a big, big, big emotional trigger. And this is the thing that's going to be like, whoa, they're going to resonate and it's going to get them to buy. So names is always something I would get. And if you struggle with this, or your closers struggle with this, I would have certain non-negotiables they have to get at the start of the call. I won't even review a sales call if they don't ask the names, because it's a waste of time. So that would be the first thing. Second thing is make sure that auditing people's profiles beforehand, and then you've got stories to tell. Third section, what we're going to go into is objections. Now, when it comes to sales, there are only 4 objections anyone can ever have. So we have spouse, as in partners, time, as in they don't have time to do it, self-belief, and then finances. So spouse we briefly touched upon. But one of the ways I would handle that is I would find out the partner's name throughout the call. I would then ask, cool, I imagine Fiona's not opposed to you getting in a better shape. I presume Fiona's not opposed to you building a business and being able to provide for her. Boom, so that one should be off. If she is opposed, that's an interesting conversation. That's where they're gonna have to dig deeper. Now, when people come up and they say, oh, I need to speak to my spouse in terms of pricing, I'll be like, okay, cool, not a problem at all. How much are you allowed to spend without asking your wife's permission? Now, if you say that in particular to a man, and he's the breadwinner, that is incredibly emasculating because he's having to ask his wife in terms of how much he's allowed to spend. And let's say he comes back and says, I'm allowed to spend, our agreement is we spend £500 before asking each other's permission. Cool. Why don't you start, put £500 down, we can just do the first 2 months and we can take it from there and just play around with it. One of the most important things to get your close rate up is to be flexible and take money when it's there. Now, time. So time, I would do this in terms of the discovery phase, in terms of a sales call. You want to find out, okay, cool. Are you currently working out at the moment? Do you currently watch TV? How much time do you spend? Like, audit their time in terms of what they're doing. And before you get to the end, I'll ask them, cool, if you've got 2 to 3 hours a week you can work out. Yes, bang, that one's gone. Self-belief, pretty easy one to handle as well. Look for other areas in their life where they've had success. So if they're successful in business, awesome, Charlie. So you've crushed it in terms of your business, you've moved to Dubai, you seem to be doing pretty well. You don't strike me as the type of guy who lacks self-belief. They'll be like, no, I'm pretty confident, I've done a lot of things. Or maybe they've been to university, they've got really highly qualifications. Whatever their thing is, find something they've crushed that will give them belief and they can connect the dots, how they've achieved success in one area of their life, they can achieve success in another area. Next up, we have finances. So this is the one that everyone says that they basically struggle with. Now, the reality is with the finances one, people have the money. People can borrow the money, they have credit cards, they can spend it. They just don't see the value in it. So this is where you need to be pretty strong in terms of putting pressure on them to actually commit to themselves and also auditing what do they actually do in terms of spending their money. So if they said to you, they're going to Disneyland in 3 months' time, well, cool, Charlie, what's more valuable for you, going to Disneyland for the 5th time, which you told me you've already been 4 times, or you dropping £50 so you can live another 10 years longer and be present father? I know what I would probably prefer to choose. I imagine your kids would probably rather you live 10 years longer than you went to Disneyland for a long time. So I would look for finances and look for areas they're spending money. So again, if you look to their social media and like they're driving flashy cars and trying some type of flamboyant lifestyle, or they show they have a big house, I would literally be, particular with guys, be super direct and be like, respectfully, Charlie, no one cares if you've got $1 million house, if you've got a 2 cents body. Boom. Like, particularly say that to a guy who has money, it will absolutely cripple them. So a lot of them will just be resistance in that. So that's how I would generally handle these. With women, you want to be slightly less aggressive. And if we come to increasing cash collected, and the first one with this is actually marketing. So what do I mean by marketing? From a marketing perspective is pushing yourself as a premium brand. Is the quality of your content good? Is it look like it's shot on like an iPhone 4 that's terrible, that's like shaky? Not going to be a premium brand product. Do you showcase some type of lifestyle that people would be attracted to? Doesn't mean you have to be flamboyant, but you're an aspirational character. This is one of the big things we teach our clients in 7-figure scaling systems, is the attractive character framework, where people basically want to be like you, because people buy from people they like. The reality is you can go on ChatGPT and get pretty good workout programs now and nutritional programs, but people need to be accountable to people they like. So this is where marketing is huge, and also showcasing results like crazy, which comes back to the proof over promises. If you are not showcasing your results, you are hemorrhaging money. And when you show your results, always do before and after photos. So before on the left, after on the right, put the weights before and after on either side, really, really clean. And the key thing here is the copy and the caption is what converts. In 2025, what's going super viral are really good transformations. So I would definitely hammer that. And then if we think about when we come into pitch people, and let's say in terms of pricing, I'll come into that in a second. When you come into pitch people, you want to have conviction. You want to have confidence. The biggest reason people struggle is they're like, it's £3,000. And they shake like a shitting dog. It's like people can read that you're nervous even about saying the price. So the reality is you have to be very confident and actually ask people to start. Because the most stupid thing, a piece of advice I got from previous mentorship back in the day when I was younger was you just say the price and then you say nothing. And the first person to talk loses. It's like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So essentially what you want to do is this. So the pricing I would suggest most people start at as a minimum is you sell 2K for 6 months, 3K for a year. Ideally, we want to try and sell a longer term program so we make more money. We want to turn and sell people up front. We do not want to sell monthly. Monthly is how you remain poor. This is why you want to sell paid up front, paid in full. And in respects to the 2K and the 3K, so I would do 2,000 for 6 months, 3K for 12. Essentially, the second 6 months is 50% discount. So people are instantly attracted to potentially do the entire year. And bearing in mind, it's January as we record this video right now. This means this is a very attractive offer for 2025 to get in the best shape of your life. So that's really the way you want to be framing that. And when we come to picture, the way I would say it is like this. So for the program to get in the best shape of your life, we basically have two prices. It's either £2,000 for 6 months or it's £3,000 for a year. The reason we do 3,000 for the year, we actually give you 50% off the second half, is we get you the majority of the results in the first 6 months. The second 6 months is just making sure you can keep these for the rest of your life. This is basically like the safety net to make sure that we lock in the results you're going to get in the first half of the year. And then what I would essentially do is explain them how it works in terms of onboarding. So basically, Charlie, once you get started, once you paid, what you do is you get an onboarding form. You fill that in with what you want to eat, when you want to work out, what equipment the gym has, all that type of personal information. You will then have an onboarding call with your coach. We've got your program designed, your nutrition laid out, and then we'll begin the program from there onwards. When would you like to get started? So actually invite people to start rather than stand there like blankly talking to the camera, which is what most people do. They sit there gaunt like this, which doesn't really help. So we want to be very direct and we want to be very informative. And we want to invite people to start. And this is how you increase the cash collected, is by pushing for the length and pushing confidence on the pitch. Now, if your closing rate, let's talk about close rate. So the minimum goal we really want for a close rate is 40 to 50%. Now, if your close rate is above 60%, you need to increase your prices. Some people should say no. If you're closing at 70, 80% and you're selling £150 a month coaching programs, good for you. You're not going to make a lot of money and you're going to be incredibly busy and you're going to have a very non-scalable business. And our job as 7-figure scaling systems is to help you remove the golden handcuffs that I have personally had back in the past, because I originally started my business in 2016 selling £40 a month PDF workbooks. It was a nightmare. That is not how you have a scalable business. You want to sell upfront, slightly higher prices, and when you start to have coaches, you want to make sure you have an 80% profit margin on fulfillment and 20% that goes in terms of costs. So that's what we want to be doing in terms of increasing the cash collected. Once you go over 60% close rate, increase the price. I tend to do that in like nudges of say like 250. So I'd increase at 250 increments. So say you're going to do, say we're at 2,000 for 6 months, and we're closing at 60%, I increase to 250. If we're still closing after 4 weeks at 60% plus, I go to 2.5, and I'd keep pushing the prices up there. The clients who actually can charge the most are the easiest ones to scale. Why? Because they can spend the most to acquire a customer, which is why in the game of scaling with paid ads, when we're looking to get to God mode, which we're going to talk about in a minute, it is very important to make sure that's nailed down, the pricing is maxed and optimal. Now, we've spoken about show rate, close rate, objections, increasing cash collected. If this was helpful, drop in the comments. Now we're going to talk about sales team. Now, most people get stuck with sales calls at 40, 60K a month. I've helped a huge amount of people build sales teams in the fitness industry. I have personally built 3 sales teams now in multi-7-figure businesses. And we're going to talk about when, who, how, and how to communicate with these people. So when should you do this? Essentially, the last thing you should really delegate and come out of is sales. So this is the last piece of the jigsaw puzzle you want to pull out of, and you don't want to pull fully out of. And this is the big mistake I see so many people make, is they hire a closer and they're like, oh, I'll give them all the calls. And then their revenue drops 50%. It's like, well, you've just given your entire front end revenue of the business to someone who has no experience, and you just give them all. So what do you think is going to happen? So what we want to be doing with this is like a sliding scale. So when you get a closer come in, once you've got them trained, and one of the things we specialize doing in 7-figure scaling systems is helping train closers for coaches. We have 2 group training calls a week with one of the best sales trainers in the world, a guy called Joe Marcuse. Now, when you have the closer come in, what we want to be doing in terms of training them is to make sure that you're giving them daily feedback. So part of the comms, you should be having a 15 to 30 minute call with them every day skimming through their calls and giving them feedback. You want to give them one thing to focus on improving. Now, a huge area to think about is in terms of intelligence and coachability. So if I say to you, for example, earlier, that I want you to ask everyone's names on sales calls, and you go and take sales calls today, I review them, and then you haven't done that, that then means you're either don't want the job or you're not intelligent or you're not coachable. So this means that's not a good person we can be training. So this is red flags where you want to be dropping people pretty quick when you're giving them very specific instructions and then they can't implement. This is why when you're training people for sales, always focus on just one thing at a time. Now, when you should be getting yourself out of this, it's probably once you're going over maybe 25, 30 calls a day, or you're over 40 to 60K a month income. Realistically, you want to try and phase out of this. So there's a couple of different options. If you're cranking it and you're confident you can get calls in, you can bring someone in as a closer, basically full-time or part-time, or you could do a hybrid role. If one of your coaches is good in your business or someone else, they can potentially take some of the sales calls. So those would be the two people where I would look at. Where should you hire these people? So particularly with our CEO clients and seven-figure scaling systems, these are clients who are doing 40 to 60K a month up to, we've got one I think who did 500K a month in November. We help them with sales teams, but we also have a pipeline of people we can provide to them. Second to that, you have Facebook groups. So if you go on Facebook and you search sales closing groups, there's millions of them on there. And then outside of that, I would go into things like Upwork, LinkedIn, Indeed. Those are the places you need to be hiring. And if I was to tell you the biggest thing I've learned in the last 12 months, 18 months, is the importance of hiring the right people. It's absolutely critical. Now, how do we get these people in? Using those methods I just mentioned, but in terms of training them, what I would do is one-to-one training calls with them, and here's a secret hack. Record all of those training calls and then put them into like a video library in something like School or Kajabi. So when we have more closers come in, you can then get them to go through and watch through the training. The other thing that's highly effective, which actually you can use as a communication feedback loop, is I would use Slack, and I would have a channel where you have all the sales calls firing to. So any calls you take, any calls your closers take, and basically you can then watch each other calls, because one of the quickest ways they can learn is to actually learn from you. And if you're not good at sales calls, you need to get good at sales calls, because this is the skill that has the biggest impact in your business growing. This is why we put so much implementation and execution one-to-one with people in seven-figure scaling systems to learn how to sell, giving them the exact scripts, the exact frameworks, all part of the 50,000 sales calls that we've taken, which is wild. So you can't screw this up, because the reality with sales, a lot of it is you don't know what you don't know. And when you get these skills, it becomes so easy, because the goal for you is this: unconscious competence. You're just good and you don't even realize. Like, I take sales calls, I don't even think about it, and it just flows. Because I've done it so many times, I'm unconsciously competent. And this is how we get you to God mode and just in business generally, is you get unconsciously competent about every single thing you do. And that comes from learning the right skills from the right people, doing them consistently. And that's how you can build a business that gives you time freedom, financial freedom, and location freedom. And those are the three things I've always wanted, alongside being able to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, and which is why I'm so passionate about helping other people just like you to do the exact same. If you want help with that, there's a link below this video. You can book in a free call with us, basically a free coaching call to find out exactly how we can help you. We'll give you some advice, try and break down what the bottleneck is in your business. So if you hit the link below the video, you can book in a free call for that now. And to finish this up, we are going to go into two most important parts. Now, where I want to get you to is God mode. God mode is essentially where you have a business that has two closers. Why do you want two closers? So you don't have key man dependency. You're booking a minimum of 12 to 15 sales calls per day, and this happens. A call gets booked, a call gets closed, someone gets coached, and you have zero involvement. The whole thing works without you. I remember sitting in the Zheng Chinese restaurant at the Madinat in Dubai on my 30th birthday. Boom, £3,000 PayPal payment came through. I was like, I thought I'd invented fire, because I had then removed myself from the system for the first time. And I was like, this can work without me. And this is where you actually have a business, not a job. And this is how you get to God mode, alongside having the right data to implement. So if you're not tracking, you're slacking. So what should you be tracking in your business? I'm going to give you the list here. What your show rate percentage is, what your close rate percentage is, what your average cash collected is. You know, it says how much these things are. On a sales tracking sheet we give our clients, we also track what the objections are. Now, why is it important to track the objections? Because you need to know what to focus on in terms of from a training perspective. We also want to track the total amount of calls you're getting booked. And this is a magic number. And this is what's called your income per call booked. And that's very, very simple to work out. So let's say for November, you booked 30 sales calls, you made £30,000. That means you make £1,000 for every sales call that gets booked. The reality why this is important to know is when you start to run paid ads, it then gives you an indication in terms of how much money you can spend to get a call booked to make money. This is a critical number most people don't know, but has a huge impact in terms of getting you to exactly where you want to be. And these are the biggest lessons I've learned. It's taken over 50,000 sales calls in my business. I want to give you as much value as we can on this YouTube channel. And you have two choices at this point. You have the DIY option. You do it yourself in terms of you can try and figure out how to build a sales team, figure out how to build a business to get to 40, 60K a month, to get to 200K a month. Or we have a done for you, done with you solution, which is us as 7-figure scaling systems, where all of the information, all the experience, all the resources I have in my own business with our own teams, we help you one-to-one to implement all of this stuff so you can get exactly where you want to be, not have all the pain, not have all the cost and the lost income that you should be making because you're not closing and booking the calls you should be. If you would like help with that, hit the link below this video, book in a free call, and we'll walk you through the entire process. It's not a sales call, we're not aggressive at all in that respect, because to be honest with you, I don't really need the money. I just love doing this and I'm incredibly passionate. If you enjoyed the video, drop a comment below, smash the subscribe, and we'll see you next video very soon.